And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
And if we're talking tight ends and we're going into round 2, maybe round 3, give me Ian Thomas, please. Let's just do the damn thing.
Just based on giving his overall ability. Again, I like his arm. I think he can make every throw.
The pick at number 12 is in.
All right, welcome back to Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I am Russell Brown. As always, joining me, CP Christian Page. My man, how we doing?
Doing well as always. Glad that football is nearing. We have legitimate games this Saturday, Miami and Florida. We talked about it a little bit last week, but a lot of prospects in that game. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm sure one of us, if not both of us, will have something together on that game, Miami versus Florida. Also, after that at 10:30, if you have it on the CBS Sports Network, Arizona at Hawaii. I'm excited for that one in itself because you kind of get a taste of Pac-12 after dark, but you also get a healthy Khalil Tate. You get J.J. Taylor. You get Cole McDonald of Hawaii. So a lot of fun stuff going there as well. But we will leave that for Thursday's show. What we want to focus on is some quick news and notes, and then we want to get back into our top 20 or top 30 prospects going into the season. And last week we did a 30 through 25 reveal, and my 30 through 25 is Jabari Zuniga from Florida, edge rusher, Travis Etienne, running back from Clemson, Jake Fromm, quarterback from Georgia. 27 would be Isaiah Simmons, linebacker from Clemson. And then it would be Darrell Taylor, edge rusher from Tennessee at 26. And then I had Nick Coe, edge rusher from Auburn, or defensive lineman, however you would want to label him. He's at 25, and that's where we left off on my board. I did not write your list down because I'm a lazy sack of you-know-what. So what was your list from 30 through 25?
All right. At number 30, I had Grant Calcaterra, the tight end out of Oklahoma. 29, C.J. Henderson, cornerback out of Florida. 28, Jalen Reagor, wide receiver out of TCU. 27, Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. 26, Jonathan Taylor, running back out of Wisconsin. And then 25, T. Higgins, wide receiver from Clemson.
T. Higgins, great route runner. Guys, you have to watch him. He's phenomenal. He will be on the board today, as well as another player that CP labeled earlier. But let's get into some quick stuff before we get into all that. Of course, we would love to know your guys' top 30 players going into the season. So make sure you comment on Spreaker.com if this is where you're listening to the show, or on iTunes. And while you're dropping the comment, go ahead, rate, review, subscribe to the show. However you go about your podcast, please add us into your mix. We're only going to add more shows as we now have, like we mentioned, college football is on tap. So we will get into plenty of stuff over the course of the season, as well as all the draft stuff during draft season. But I want to get into the Chase Young picture from yesterday that surfaced on Twitter. I don't even have this up right now, but I don't know who tweeted out the picture originally. You just see it kind of on the timeline. I know it was probably some Ohio State beat writer that had a picture of KJ Hill, J.K. Dobbins, and Chase Young in this picture. And Chase Young is just – and by the way, if you don't know who he is, he's an edge rusher for Ohio State. He's listed at 6'5", 265, and he is just a towering, massive human being of a person. What were your thoughts when you saw that picture?
He's a big dude. And it's not even fair because he looks even bigger because he wears number 2. So that it also goes in his favor. I love it when defensive linemen wear a single number. It makes them look so intimidating. It doesn't happen that often, but it makes them look so intimidating, and I love it. But, yeah, what'd you say, 6'5", 265. And the dude, he's just so athletically gifted. So he's definitely going to be a problem. And we don't have to get too much into the scouting because we'll definitely be talking about him in our top 20, top 5, possibly even top 2. Mm-hmm. So we won't really get in the ins and outs of his scouting portfolio. But Chase Young, he's a big dude. And now that he has that limelight in Columbus this year with Nick Bosa moving on, he had a little bit of it last year with Bosa dealing with some injuries and eventually calling it quits. But Young is going to be a superstar if he's not there yet. But this picture just emphasizes and accentuates really his overall ability without even turning on the tape.
Yeah, and I mean, last year he really, for the most part, I feel like he's a very common player on the top 25, the top 10 list of college football. Many people have him in the top 5, and I know both of us will have him up there, so spoiler alert, which we'll drop the rest on Thursday, of course. But, you have a guy like Chase Young who was kind of put in a situation this past year of, okay, Bosa's injured. You have a guy like Draymond Jones who is very versatile, but he's an interior pass rusher. So they needed somebody off the edge. They needed somebody to step up. And that's exactly what Chase Young did for Ohio State this past year. And, I mean, he did it in a big way. He had 10.5 sacks, 34 tackles, 5 pass breakups, which is, in my opinion, very impressive for an edge rusher because that means you've got your eyes on the football. That shows that you've got length and you've got the ability to time passes as they're crossing the line of scrimmage and leaving the quarterback's hands. So that's always important. And he also had 9 quarterback hits. So Chase Young is very talented. Also, I just want to add this, and I'm going to be working on this over the weekend. On my birthday weekend, by the way, I'm still going to be grinding out the draft content. I've got an edge rusher from Ohio State that I think could be very under the radar, and that is Jonathan Cooper from Ohio State. He only had 2.5 sacks this past year, but he's listed opposite of Chase Young. And if Chase Young's going to draw some double teams, this, that, and the third, I think Cooper could be a guy that's going to see a lot of single pass sets. And I would not be surprised if he's a guy that gets close to double-digit sacks.
Yeah, I certainly agree. It seems like every year there's somebody from Ohio State, but maybe that person, like you said, gains that attention. Well, gains that repertoire or gains that attention based on the other guy that is the alpha dog gains more attention, so it frees up some space for this other guy. And what you were talking about, Jonathan Cooper, he's 6'4", nearly 260 pounds too, so he's right up there when you're just comparing the height and weight. But yeah, I'm definitely glad that you're going to highlight him because he's another guy. He may not be, as talented overall as Chase Young or the Bosas or whoever it may be, but he definitely has a lot of talent. He has a lot of things ready to be unfolded in front of us. So I'm definitely looking forward to you breaking down his film.
Ohio State's just got a good defensive line. It's a very veteran-led defense. And, I mean, we're going to do a prediction show, I think, Saturday. Thursday, I think Thursday's going to be packed. We're going to preview a little bit of the college games that we have on tap. We're going to finish our top 20 prospects, which we'll run down the list. We won't talk about every player. We'll highlight, maybe 2 players or whatever. But I would like to get some predictions in before the season starts on Saturday. And I've got to say, Ohio State to me is just the team in the Big Ten to beat. And a lot of it's just because of this defensive line up front. Again, Jonathan Cooper, senior player, 6'4", 257. Devon Hamilton, senior, 6'4", 310 at D-tackle. Another defensive tackle who's really talented at 6'1", 283, Robert Landers, who's a senior. And then you got the junior and Chase Young, who's 6'5", 265. I'm hoping we see Cooper at the Senior Bowl. I'm hoping we see Hamilton and Landers there. It's probably a stretch, but hopefully we see one of those 3 prospects there. That would be a lot of fun. But, yeah, if you have not seen the Chase Young picture, and if you have not watched that defensive line, specifically Chase Young, but really all 4 of them, you need to check them out. So put on the All-22 of Ohio State or go to YouTube, watch a full game. You will not be disappointed. And then, of course, go on to Twitter and search the Chase Young picture. And I promise you, you will not be disappointed with that either because he's a massive human being. And if you're a fan of the NFL and your team is going to suck this year and you're going to pick in the top 5, you're going to want this kid on your team because he's just – I don't even know if I can call him a kid. He's literally – he looks like he's 38 years old just beating up on people. It's insane. I can't believe a guy that's 20 years old looks like that. It's insane. But
it is. It's not fair, but at least
yeah.
we don't have to deal with it. We get to watch him in awe.
Exactly. But like I said, go to Twitter, find the picture. Also go to Twitter, follow us there @_Christian page, @Russ NFL Draft. Smash the follow button. But moving forward, let's look at quarterbacks now, moving from the guys that don't like guys like Chase Young. Justin Fields was named the starting quarterback for Ohio State, since we're talking about him. We had some comments on Twitter about an episode from last week where we talked about the quarterback battle between Ohio State's Justin Fields and whoever the other kid is. What's his name?
Gunnar Hoke.
Gunnar Hoke. And you got those two kids. I was going to say Gunnar Rourke for some reason. I don't know why. But
guess what? It doesn't matter.
It does not matter because it's the Justin Fields show. And no, I mean, I think we kind of expected this. We both would have been a little bit surprised. Like, I'm not surprised by Tate Martell for Miami, Florida, but Justin Fields would have been surprising. We mentioned that last week. Apparently, people on Twitter, because we reposted the podcast, it just – people blew it out of proportion. So it is what it is. But, folks, go back and actually listen to the show. We mentioned many times that we thought Justin Fields was going to be the quarterback, and we'd be shocked if Justin Fields wasn't. So he's named the starter. What's your expectations for him for this season? Can he get the job done? Can he step up for the Buckeyes, kind of like Dwayne Haskins did this past year?
Sure. I mean, there's every reason to believe that he can. I mean, it's going to maybe an adjustment for Ryan Day, now the head coach, a full-time head coach, I should say, at Ohio State. But there's going to be a little bit of adjustment. I mentioned last week on the podcast that Georgia and Ohio State's offenses, they have their own complex measures. They're not, it's not apples and oranges, but it's not necessarily the same fruit either. So it's going to take a little bit of an adjustment for Justin Fields. But what I really like about how Ohio State has really implemented their quarterbacks over the years with Urban Meyer especially, and Ryan Day also having his hand in developing those quarterbacks. They develop the offense around the talent of those quarterbacks. So I definitely think Justin Fields can really thrive in this offense. Again, it may take him a little bit of time because, he didn't have, had right around, 50 to 60 passes at Georgia, not really heavy pressure situations, especially when he had to drop back in the pocket and deliver something in a muddy pocket or in tight coverage. But I think once he kind of gets his feet underneath them and really gains some kind of rapport with these receivers and the offensive line and along with the running game, I think he'll be just fine. And I have every reason to believe that Ohio State is definitely the favorite. Not buying into Michigan this year. They still have a lot to prove in my mind. So I think Ohio State, based on the talent around him, Justin Fields is definitely set up to succeed this year.
Yeah, no, and he's got a veteran offensive line in front of him. You've got a guy like Josh Myers, who's the youngest projected starter on their offensive line. Their center, he's a sophomore, but their right guard, Jonah Jackson's a senior. Gavin Cupp, their left guard, he's a junior. Right tackle, Brandon Bowen, is a senior. And Thayer Munford, left tackle, is a junior. And I think Thayer Munford could be a player that we talk about a little bit later on in the year. I think he might be okay for them. But, I mean, they did lose some guys over the last couple of years up front. I mean, Billy Price, Michael Jordan, Isaiah Prince. But those were guys that played with J.T. Barrett. Those were guys that played with Dwayne Haskins. So now this is Justin Fields' show, and he's going to be able to build chemistry with guys that are really playing for the first time or just really now getting their first set of action with him as their quarterback. So I think that's important, and I think it's going to be fun to watch Ohio State, as weird as that might be. They've got 5 road games this year: at Indiana, at Nebraska, at Northwestern, at Rutgers, and at Michigan. The Northwestern game's a Friday night, so we'll see how that works out for them, losing a day of rest. But they're coming off a bye from that, so they should be okay. They're returning 9 players to their defense, and that's a big thing too, is like I mentioned, their defense is stacked up front. They're bringing back players. I think that's important. And I think that they could have a big year. So we'll see what happens. Another quarterback that we heard was named the starter was at Illinois, the Fighting Illini. They went ahead and named Michigan grad transfer Brandon Peters as their starting quarterback. So I'm curious as to how this one's going to work out. He's former Mr. Football in Indiana. He had 4 starts at Michigan. He threw for just under 700 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. And in his first 2 seasons there, he's 58 for 110. So not terrible, but he did play okay in the Outback Bowl against South Carolina. He did beat out a bunch of younger guys for the position. Isaiah Williams and Corin Taylor were freshmen competing for the jobs. Matt Robinson is a sophomore there. But it does sound like Lovie Smith is very high on Brandon Peters. He showed some potential at Michigan. Nothing, too spectacular, but he was a guy that, was highly recruited at 6'5", 220. Again, Mr. Football of Indiana. So we'll see exactly what he does for Illinois. He's playing with a lot less talent for the Fighting Illini than he did for the Wolverines. There was times that he, would miss throws for Michigan and everything else. But once Shea Patterson showed up, it was kind of writing on the wall for Brandon Peters that, hey, they're going with Shea Patterson at Michigan, and good for Peters to go to a new school, beat out some teams or beat out some players, and now we'll get to see what he does in the Big Ten against teams like Purdue and Indiana and the competition that he's used to facing. So it'll be fun to watch that. But I know you're excited about what we're going to talk about next, and that's the Auburn starting quarterback position. Bo Nix named the quarterback. He's a 4-star recruit from Pinson, Alabama. Give me the lowdown on Bo Nix. I mean, a freshman, true freshman. What can we expect from what you know, what you see, and everything else?
He will be the first true freshman to start at Auburn in a season opener since I believe like the 1940s, which I didn't even know true freshmen could play back at that time. So that definitely says a lot about how mature he is as an 18-year-old coming into the situation. And, oh, yeah, you got to play Oregon week 1. So definitely there's a lot of confidence in that coaching staff and just the overall personnel around that athletics department within the coaching room. But just going over some of his high school statistics, 127 passing touchdowns, 34 rushing touchdowns. A lot of people see the short little white kid. He can't run the football, but Auburn can game plan also around his running ability, something that Jarrett Stidham could somewhat scramble and get some of those tough earned yards, but not enough to sit there and be like, hey, he's a true dual threat quarterback. Bo Nix can definitely add that to the element of Gus Malzahn's offense, because we know Gus Malzahn loves to run the read option. That definitely, heightens or gets to the height in his peak offense, seeing, Cam Newton, Nick Marshall. Those two guys were superb athletes. He's a 2-time state champion, Alabama Mr. Football, was at the Under Armour All-America game. So he has every bit of accolades. And, of course, he's used to Auburn because his dad, Patrick, played in the early 90s for Auburn as well, one of the better quarterbacks in Auburn history just from a statistical standpoint. So he definitely checks all the boxes from a resume standpoint. But when the true freshman comes in, you're talking about Peters having a little bit of game tape from Michigan coming over, so Illinois knows what they have in store. But when you're adapting to just the flow of SEC play coming from the high school level, still a lot of question marks surrounding him. But I had the opportunity to see him play in the previous state title game, and the guy can sling it. I mean, he is so impressive from just a 17, 18-year-old, however old he was at that time last December, and the guy throwing off his back foot, whether you appreciate it or not, or want him to do it or not, throwing off his back foot from one sideline to the opposite sideline, pinpoint accuracy, a gritty football player. You can just tell the guy is just a bookworm when it comes to football study and tape. I think that's what impressed most about Gus Malzahn. And I think it says a lot, again, him beating out, even though Joey Gatewood is a redshirt freshman, but had a year to develop under that offense, under Jarrett Stidham and under Gus Malzahn. It says a lot that Bo Nix comes in, even though he was enrolled early for spring, comes in, takes that job away, and Gus Malzahn and that coaching staff has the utmost confidence in him going to Dallas to play Oregon and coming away with a victory. This guy is super impressive. I'm going to be really disappointed if he doesn't pan out, because I think he could have 3 years under his belt, and we could be talking about him in a few years of being a really strong candidate, be one of the top quarterbacks in 2023, I guess that would be.
Yeah. Well, 20. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. I'm a journalism major. I don't do math.
No, yeah, you're right. 2023, because we got 2020 coming up, then 2021, 22, and then 23.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, so Bo Nix, true freshman, starting for Auburn. Their first game will be against Oregon and Justin Herbert, and we all know the goods there. But do you know about Bo Nix's father?
Oh yeah.
Who's his dad? Come on, give me the history lesson.
Well, I touched on it just a little bit. He played in the 90s for Auburn. I think he has one of the best, most efficient passer ratings in Auburn history. And the fun tidbit, which is kind of ironic.
There we go.
I'm going to try to – okay, this is what you wanted. I'm going to try to phrase this the appropriate way. So Patrick Nix, his father, has the most passing yards in a season opener in Auburn football history. So Bo Nix is going to have that opportunity of starting his first game and, of course, the season opener. So I'm sure we'll see that statistic pop up, Sunday or Saturday night on ESPN of kind of comparing the two. But there's definitely a legacy involved, but don't think for one reason that's why he got this position. Because like I read, all his high school accolades, he's definitely earned this spot. And, again, beating out a redshirt freshman quarterback that's already been under the system for 1 year says a lot about what this kid can do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do, especially in week 1 versus Oregon.
Oh, yeah. There we go. That's the ticket. So
that's what you wanted.
So he's going to set the record. He's going to upset Oregon with his Auburn Tigers. You're going to go nuts. We're going to do an explicit podcast that Saturday.
Oh, I will be in Dallas for that game as well. So you may get a very unhinged Christian Page if Auburn comes away with a victory.
Dropping F-bombs. I like it. All right. So other quarterbacks, and maybe, just maybe this fan base was dropping F-bombs when the announcement was made. I don't know why they would do that. I'm very pleased with this decision from head coach Neil Brown of West Virginia. Austin Kendall, the graduate transfer from Oklahoma. He was named the starting quarterback for the August 31st season opener against James Madison. Kendall, he's backed up some very talented quarterbacks over the last 2 seasons. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. He was a redshirt in 2017. So when he left, obviously, Oklahoma, there was kind of like, why is he leaving? He's next in line, this and that. Obviously, though, Jalen Hurts transferring over. He wanted a fresh start. I think he's going to get that fresh start. He was 28 of 39 for 265 and 3 scores in his career at Oklahoma. I like the move. I think he's going to be a really good fit for West Virginia and Neil Brown and what they look to do. I think we're going to see a lot of different types of offenses from West Virginia. I don't think it's strictly going to be just the spread. I would be, I guess, more in tune to say Neil Brown's going to run some stuff under center. He's going to definitely run some spread and everything else. But I think just Austin Kendall is a fit there. He's getting a fresh start to replace Will Grier. Now, I know they've lost some talented guys. Gary Jennings is no longer there. David Sills is no longer there. Taven Wesco is no longer there. So definitely they lost some players, and Kennedy McCoy as well, the starting running back. But they've got, I think, enough pieces there. TJ Simmons, wide receiver, he had 28 receptions last year. I think he could be very much in line for a bigger role. I like their left tackle a lot. Colton McKivitz, I think he's a talented left tackle. He's not on my top 30 board, but he's a player that I watched a little bit last night. I'm going to watch more of him this weekend and see exactly where he kind of falls in order with some of the offensive tackles I've watched thus far. But I like what I've seen in the early going from him. So Austin Kendall makes that move. I know you didn't want to touch on the Brandon Peters move, but this one's a little bit more universal. Do you have opinion one way or the other on Austin Kendall and West Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, just based on the situation, good for him, because he's like, I ain't backing up another quarterback.
Right.
I mean, you back up. You touched on Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, back-to-back number 1 overall picks. By no means is Jalen Hurts going to be the number 1 overall pick next year, coming over from Alabama, but he's still a really good quarterback, has that dynamic ability, and obviously Austin Kendall was not going to get that position if he would have stuck around for an extended amount of time. So good for Kendall. It may be a little bit different. Like you said, you touched on all the personnel losses up front, in the receiving core, also the running back, and then adjusting to the new flow of Neil Brown and his playbook. But Troy had a pretty dynamic offense when Neil Brown was there. They had a couple quarterbacks that were highly efficient. The run game was pretty healthy overall. So I'll be interesting to see what West Virginia is going to do. But it's a good situation for Kendall to get finally that starting call, but it's kind of a bad situation or unfortunate situation because there's a ton of turnover of what took place from last year to this year. But good for Kendall going forward. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he's capable of, because we know he's a talented quarterback based on his high school marks and, getting that scholarship from Oklahoma. But he just played very sparingly, obviously, because Mayfield and Murray weren't coming off the field for any reason unless it was suspension or injury. So good for Kendall going forward. So I'll be definitely looking forward to some West Virginia football and seeing the involvement of Kendall in that relationship with Brown going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch just West Virginia and what they do in the Big 12. And to see if they take some steps back. Do they take some steps forward? Then, of course, it's going to be fun to watch Oklahoma. Do they take some steps back or they take some steps forward? And if Jalen Hurts becomes the first overall pick, I will I don't know what I'll do. I'll have to do something crazy because that would be insane.
We're going to circle the Oklahoma backup quarterback and go ahead and bet on the money line for that guy to be the number 1 overall quarterback.
Yeah, we'll bet our life savings, and then we'll never be able to retire. Yeah, so that's the quarterback news. That's some of the news and notes over the last week. There'll be more as we get to the season kickoff this weekend, and we get some updates on players. We get some more statistics. We get the actual games and everything else. Because right now it's just kind of speculation, what we think can happen and everything else. And we're just trying to piece it together. But now we want to piece together our big boards going into the season, the preseason top 30. Like we mentioned, our players 30 through 25. Now we're going to do 24 through 20. So we're going to give you 5 players each. CP, do you want me to kick this off or you want to get it going at 24?
I'll go ahead and start because I'm probably going to struggle with his name. Yetur Gross-Matos, the defensive end / edge rusher from Penn State, 6'5", 242. Last year, 54 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, and a couple of forced fumbles. He's not a super technical defensive end, but he shows a lot of athletic ability, a lot of potential there to work with. He has kind of that short area quickness to really dominate in a phone booth. And I know a lot of times the term phone booth is used for offensive linemen especially, of just, hey, you have, close quarters and you have to sit there and just pretty much, just bull rush or sit there and bulldoze your guy over. But Gross-Matos shows a lot of quickness in that area, especially in his upper body, to really disengage from those tackles. He likes to operate a lot from that left side of the offensive line. So he has a lot of athletic ability to work with. And going forward, he's maybe not super heavy below the belt where he doesn't really have that anchor, that hardcore anchor, with the ability to sustain, but he has an A-plus motor, one of the better motors out of all these guys that we're going to talk about, in my opinion, from who we've already talked about and the guys that we're going to talk about at the end of the week as well. So he partners that motor with that athletic ability, and I talked about his quickness, especially at that first step. Again, like I said, some cons or some weaknesses that he has that he needs to improve. I think he just needs to get stronger in his lower body, withstand a little better in the run game and setting the edge. He's solid at it, but I think he can really take that next step forward if we're talking about him being a potential top 15, top 20 prospect. And I think he needs to kind of refine on some pass rush moves. Like I said, he has a lot of quickness in his upper body, has some length to work with. But I think overall, if he kind of just tunes that up a little bit and kind of, picks 2 or 3 go-to pass rush moves, I think you're looking at really strong edge rushing prospects. A lot of potential in Yetur Gross-Matos, the Penn State edge rusher.
Couldn't said it any better myself. 24th for me, C.J. Henderson, corner from Florida, a guy you talked about briefly last week. I'm going to go into some detail about him right now. He was listed as an athlete coming out of high school from Columbus High School out in Miami, Florida. He goes to Florida as a 4-star recruit. He had 26 offers. He really could have went anywhere. He could have went to Bama. He could have went to Miami. He could have went to Auburn. It didn't really matter. He was going to go somewhere that fit him. I think he went to the right spot because of his athletic ability. I think it's starting to show with his length. He's putting on size and muscle. He's listed at 6'1", 191. He came in at 175, and he's got some big shoes to fill. I mean, Voshawn Joseph is no longer there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is no longer there. Ja'Kai Polite is no longer there. Now, I know I talked about Zuniga last week. I think Henderson's a guy that on just that back part of the secondary, he's a guy that's going to be relied on, again, because of his athletic ability. I like his length. I like the twitchiness that he has. I like the fluidity that he shows. And, 38 tackles, 7 pass breakups this past year, 2 interceptions. So I think the ball skills are there. I think he can take the step in the right direction. I hope he takes the step into the NFL like Quincy Wilson did for Florida and not Tease Tabor. We'll see what happens. But I like Henderson a lot. So that's 24th on my board. Who do you have at 23?
23 is a guy that you like a lot, and I'm sure he's probably a little higher on your board than he is right here at 23 for me. Julian Okwara, defensive end / edge rusher.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 6'4", 235. Feel free to comment after I'm done. Tell me where I'm wrong if you want to. But last year, 38 tackles, 12.5 for loss, 8 sacks, and 21 quarterback hurries. That's incredible. But it goes to show that he has a lot of fluidity, a lot of flexibility. I think he's still a little raw when it comes to overall pass rushing ability from a technique standpoint. But you have the length, you have the motor, you have the athletic ability to work with. When I say flexibility, I know I just touched on it, but when I say flexibility, I mean the dude has that motorcycle bend where he can almost get down, has that ankle flexion that you really like to see from that outside, especially when he's rushing from the 7-tech position. Has a little bit of bull rushing ability as well. So I think when he focuses maybe a little bit more on the run and tunes up a little bit, kind of what I was talking about with Gross Matus, with my 24th player on my board. Both of these guys have the world of potential going forward if they tune up some things from a technique standpoint. These two guys are pretty impressive. I like Okwara's athletic ability overall a little bit more than Gross Matus.
I love Okwara. We know that. He's very much my brand. He is not at 23. He is much higher on the list. But
I knew he would be. I have a defensive end that's on my brand too that's going to be a lot higher. He may not even have cracked your 30. I'll be interested to see, but I'll let you know when we get to him.
Is it Darrell Taylor?
No, it's not. You already mentioned him. It's not him.
Is it Nick Coe?
Nope. Are you just going to play the guessing game now?
No, okay. I'll focus on –
we can if you want to. If you want to kill a little bit of time.
No, we'll be here all day. Trey Adams, 23 for me. I know some people might say, Russ, that is way too low. This guy's a top 15 guy. Look, I'm not saying he's not. 6'8", 314. He's a senior. He's got one hell of a picture on the Washington website. If you've not seen it, he's got a great mullet, great smile. But it seems like a good guy. Not saying he's not whatever, but, I mean, he came back last year after torn ACL. I thought he looked so after that. I hope this year it's more dominant. But just off of what I saw from last year and the year before, I mean, you know, he's been through the torn ACL process. Can he stay healthy? That's my biggest concern with him, and that's why he's at 23. Probably realistically speaking, with his punch, his length, I think he's a player that would probably be in the top 20, probably at 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that range. But I've got him listed at 23, and I think the health is a big concern for me. And maybe I'm falling down the trap that I did last year where, like, at the very last minute last year, or this past year, I guess, Chase Winovich was higher on my board than Rashawn Gary. I moved him down because he got injured, and I was a little bit concerned, so I moved him down a little bit. Maybe I should stop doing that with players, but I think just going into it with the way I've seen Trey Adams play, the way he played against Utah and Ohio State this past season, it's just not enough for me to justify and say, hey, this guy's a top 20 player. I thought he looked good in his first action back, but I don't think he looked good enough at the left tackle position. So maybe he's more of a right tackle. Maybe he's a guy that gets better over time now that he's got really a full year after the injury. But realistically speaking, I think he's more of a top 25 player than a top 20 guy. So Trey Adams, again, good guy, but 23 is where I've got him. Who do you have at 22?
Yeah, touching on Adams real quick, he did not crack my top 30 solely pretty much based on his durability issues. I mean, he had the knee injury like you touched on. He's had some back issues. So I don't know if a long NFL future is in his future, I should say, or the longevity of the NFL is in his future, because there's just a lot of red flags. And I know that's not really fair when you're talking about projections and rankings going into the season, but that's just kind of something that I put on hold or put on the back burner, but definitely pulling for him. Like you said, he had a lot of hype coming, into last season, but didn't make the cut, for injury purposes. But I think going forward, Washington, I think they'll be a solid team again, not as explosive as they were a year ago. But I think Adams will get a lot of attention too, especially with McGarry not being there as well. So number 22, I have CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Last year, 65 catches, 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, 17.8 yards per catch average. When you turn on the tape with him, try to find him drop a pass because I can't. I can't find one. He catches almost everything.
He catches the ones out of bounds.
What's up?
He catches the ones out of bounds.
Well, he catches them everywhere. I mean, you throw him one right now, he's going to catch it. He's going to find a way. He's a magnet to the football.
It's insane,
man. Yeah, I mean, going forward, I was talking about Calcaterra catches almost everything, especially in the red zone. CeeDee Lamb catches everything across the field. I mean, he's a really solid route runner to the extent of where his route tree goes. Oklahoma, they don't have necessarily a diverse route tree. We talk about Oklahoma receivers every single year, kind of like to spread it out. A lot of go routes as well. He's not that track speed star like his teammate Hollywood Brown was a year ago. So I'll be really interested to see when the draft preparation comes up what his 40 time would be. It's not going to be bad, but I don't know if it's going to be top 15 worthy. But talking about a couple more of his pros, his body control is pretty much elite, in my opinion. His release off the line of scrimmage, in and out of his breaks, near the sidelines, in the red zone. I really like his overall ability. So I think really going forward, if you're just looking for a projection standpoint, I think kind of his speed overall is going to become in question, though he's not lacking in that department, kind of like what I was talking about kind of with Jalen Reagor on last week's show. But going forward with Lamb, he works a little bit, which I don't know if it's of his control on his route tree, but I think he kind of can diversify that at the next level. CeeDee Lamb, talk about, Jalen Hurts having a go-to receiver. Lamb's going to put up 1,300 yards receiving. If not, then I will be surprised.
I love CeeDee Lamb. He's a freak, man. He's an absolute freak. He's got a great catch radius. He's got strong hands. I know he's not, like you mentioned, he's not track speed good, but I think he's athletic enough definitely to play the position. I don't think there'll be any concerns of him outrunning corners or anything. I think he'll be just fine. 22 on my board is Bryce Hall, cornerback from Virginia. Big fan of this kid, a great press corner. I have a hard time evaluating corners at this point in the year because I like to see how they do at the combine, how they do at their pro days. I think that athletic ability is very important. Now, I'm not saying if the cornerback position, if the guy doesn't run a 4.35, then he can't be on my board. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I don't want to draft a cornerback. Let's just say Bryce Hall, for example, he runs a 4.7 40. That's going to be a concern, and he's not going to stay at 22. He's going to move to 70 or something. I'm going to have some legitimate concerns over a corner that's running slower than the next guy, and it's hard to figure that out on film. I don't care what anybody says. You can tell the twitchy athletes and the guys that can click close and everything else, and that can flip their hips. I get all that, but for me, it's just hard for corners sometimes. But Bryce Hall, easy evaluation, a very sticky press corner that has got ball skills for days. He is, I know they lost Juan Thornhill this past year, but 22 pass breakups this past season and 2 interceptions, 62 tackles. Bryce Hall is just a freak at 6'1", 200 pounds, tons of experience. They're going to need his experience when they play against teams like, Notre Dame, when they've got to go there on the road. They've got to go to North Carolina. You've got to go to Miami. They've got to start the season on the road at Pittsburgh. But Virginia could be a team that, last year they went 8-5. Maybe this is a team that we talk about a little bit more at 9-3 or maybe 10-2. They do have to play Virginia Tech, but they don't have to play the Clemsons of the world. They don't have to play I know it's, not the same conference, but they don't have to play like Florida and Alabama. They have a relatively good schedule, in my opinion, and they bring back 8 players on defense. They bring back 6 players on offense, and I think Bryce Hall's their best player. And I think he's a guy that we're going to be talking about in the first round when we get into April of next year. And maybe he falls into the second round conversation, but again, I think he's a first round guy at this point, and I have a hard time believing that with his athletic ability, with his press coverage skills and everything else, I just think he's too good for teams to really consider him anywhere else other than the top 25.
Yeah, I really like this cornerback class, and I know there may not be a lot of guys maybe at that top 10. I mean, I know you can push, and I'm not going to name drop, but I guess I will real quick. But you can push like Christian Fulton up there a little bit if you want. He's from LSU. He's a guy, and then a couple other guys. And one guy that I really like, you were talking about just the physicality of Bryce Hall, the physicality of Jalen Johnson, the corner out of Utah. I love it. He's almost too physical to the sense where he's going to draw a lot of flags, but I've heard that before, and some of those corners have made a career in the NFL going, so far, just depending on who their position coach is and how they clean up some of that technique. But Jalen Johnson, 6 foot, 195 pounds, last year 41 tackles, 4 picks, 1 return for a touchdown against KJ Costello and Stanford, intercepted it on the goal line, jumped the route and took it 99 yards back to the end zone, showed his speed there. So that's definitely a box you can check as well. Just that physical, aggressive attitude. Like I said, he's really good in press situation. Utah uses him a decent bit off the ball, so he's not this super silky smooth guy when it comes to his lower body. So I think if you're looking at an outside cover guy in a press situation, he's your guy. But if you play him a little further off the ball, may have a little bit of trouble. But I do like his acceleration overall. But I think his ball skills are fine. And overall, his length and strength, like I said, to be that outside cornerback. I like Jalen Johnson a lot. Only thing is he really needs to clean up some of his technique because he can play a little too physical, and it's going to draw some flags. It's drawing flags now, so I can't imagine what it's going to draw, especially when you got the ability to now review pass interference. Jalen Johnson may lose a job because of it, but I think going forward, if he can clean up a little bit of, just grabbing and just being overly physical, I think he'll be just fine. So, again, he's just one of the guys of the cornerbacks that I really like in this 2020 class.
I'm glad you brought up Utah because I am a big fan of the Utes. Michigan State's obviously the hometown team, but Utah's been a team that I've enjoyed watching a lot over the last several years. Obviously, Zach Moss is one of my guys for this year, but can we just talk about Kyle Whittingham, their head coach, for a minute? He's been there for 15 years, and he has compiled an 11-2 bowl record since he's been there. 120-61 is his overall record. So Kyle Whittingham, very underrated, I think, as far as head coaches go across the country. But I'm glad you brought up the Utah defense. I know we're trying to focus on our players right now.
They're so nasty on defense.
Their defense is, they're bringing back 7 players. Julian Blackman might be one of their more overlooked guys. He had 10 pass breakups this past year at safety. Good length, 6'1", 190, very fluid, I think. And then their defensive line is just so good up front. You've got Tupai, Fodu, Pensini, and then Bradley Anae, he's a monster. 7.5 tackles for loss this past year, 8 sacks. He had 60 tackles or something like that. So I really like Utah this year. I don't know. Maybe I put them in my top 4 for the playoff. That'd be nuts. But anyways, go to 21 on your list of whoever 21 is.
Well, that was 21, so I'll go to 20 real quick. So 20
who was 21?
Jalen Johnson was 21.
Oh, so then I got to go 21. Okay.
Yeah, you're up.
Oh,
man.
man.
Go, but you're up.
Damn. Okay. So anyways, 21.
You got carried away talking about Utah's defense, bro.
And I can't tell you why my pants don't fit. I can tell you just – anyways, TCU wide receiver Jalen Reagor is 21 on my board here. Explosive kid. His dad, I think I mentioned this last week, he played at Texas Tech or TCU. I can't remember where he played, but his dad was a talented college football player. Reagor might be more talented than his dad. He's their leading receiver this past year. He had 72 receptions, 9 touchdowns. He had over 1,000 yards. He's going to bring that same mentality that he had last year. Very explosive after the catch. I think he's a very good fit. They've got Alex Delton, their quarterback. I think, Sean Robinson's gone. I know they played Mike Collins a little bit this past year, but either way, Jalen Reagor, just the route running ability, the catch radius is there, the explosiveness after the catch. I really wouldn't be surprised. And I know, again, it's very early, but he's going to be at the combine. I would not be surprised, and again, if he's healthy, but I would not be surprised if Reagor is one of the faster receivers, if not the fastest receiver, when we get to the combine in March or February, whenever when is it, March? It's March, right?
Yeah.
Combine in March. So, yeah. No,
Well, I mean, I don't know. It may depend. I don't know. My brain's so mush from last year's class. If somebody told me who the first overall pick was, I would probably fumble on my words to say Kyler Murray. So you know what? Let it be in November. Let the NFL Combine be in November.
That would be nuts. But I will just say, Jalen Reagor, again, fluid route runner. I love the explosiveness. I think that's just what draws me to him. Like, I don't want to say Deshaun Jackson because I feel like that gets overused, but like that's kind of what it is. And I guess you could kind of say Tyreek Hill as well. I don't think he's that type of athlete, like that type of twitchiness, but man, he works hard. Reagor is he's a guy that I think, he might get lost a little bit in the shuffle because of Jerry Jeudy and, you mentioned T. Higgins. You've mentioned CeeDee Lamb already. We haven't even gotten to the Colorado kid, Shania Twain, whatever the hell his name is. Yeah, Rager's a guy that's going to get lost in it all, and I think he's very talented, and I hope we see him in the first round because I think that's the type of caliber kid that he can be. So finalizing your board here, number 20, who do you got?
Yeah. At number 20, we have Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson. You touched on him a little bit last week. 204 attempts last year, over 1,600 yards, 24 touchdowns. Again, how he finished 7th in the Heisman, I don't know how that happened. If he puts up those same numbers this year, especially just of the spotlight that Clemson's program's been in over the past handful of years, then they win the freaking national title, and he's still kind of under the radar, which is just mind-boggling to me. But going forward, he will not be under the radar anymore. He's one of the best players in college football. I love his leg drive, his ability to play in between the tackles, his ability to really just to hit the hole with some explosion and just lower his shoulder. And this guy has some of the best contact balance I have ever seen from a running back, a receiver, whoever it may be. The guy does not go down easy. It takes a multitude of tacklers to bring him down to the turf. He bounces off when you think the play's over with, and he just finds ways to get in the end zone. It's not a surprise that he has 24 touchdowns. Those touchdowns, I mean, more than half of them probably come from 20-plus yards. The guy, he maybe doesn't have elite speed. He has a little bit of heavy feet. He's not as maybe that short area quickness to maybe against popular belief. I don't think he has that elite short area quickness, that elite fluidity, but he finds ways to get out of sticky situations, mostly due because of that contact balance. But I think going forward, Travis Etienne, he's one of the best players in college football. Trevor Lawrence gets all the buzz. T. Higgins, Justin Ross, some Clemson offensive linemen, of course, their defense. But Etienne, he's pretty much the captain of this train going forward, and he makes this offense go.
Yeah, he's a home run threat, and I will say this. I will butcher that name every single time. I always forget that it's Etienne because I'm positive now. I've said it at least twice on the show because he's 29th on my board. I've said Etney, Travis Etney, 3-4 times. So it's Etienne. I'll work on it, but I promise you it's not gonna change. But we are both ending number 20 with a running back. I'm ending with my top-ranked running back, and that's DeAndre Swift out of Georgia. Maybe this is a little too early for some. I like him here. I really like what he brings to the table. He's explosive. I like the cutting ability. I like the ability in small spaces, small windows of the field, in those tight areas. I think he can work through the garbage. I think he's great in the open field. He can catch passes out of the backfield. And this is just a Georgia offense that I think can definitely take the step in the right direction. I know they lost some crucial wide receivers, but I think Swift is kind of like you mentioned with Etienne. He's kind of the thing that makes it go. I think Swift is the same thing. He's kind of like the pistons to the engine. He makes it go, and it's not like the running back thing. It's just he makes it go. He had over 1,000 yards this past year. I think he's going to definitely do the same thing this season. I'm curious as to really my big question mark is for Georgia's offense outside of the receivers, obviously, but is the number 2 running back. Over the last 2 years, we've seen guys like Elijah Holyfield hit 1,000 yards. We've seen Sony Michel. We've seen Nick Chubb. We've seen talented running backs here. We know DeAndre Swift, but who's going to be that number 2? Could it be a guy, where am I at here? Brian Heron, or however you say his name. Could it be him? Could it be Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook? Is he much in the mix there? Fun little fact for you. So I'm interested to see Georgia's offense progress with Jake Fromm, but obviously DeAndre Swift as well. And they obviously have Andrew Thomas, who we have not talked about yet, but I'm sure we will. But Swift at 20 for me, home run threat, explosive, elusive, can catch passes out of the backfield. I think he's just the more complete running back of anybody in this class. So that's where I've got him at 20. Do you have anything else you would like to add, my friend?
No, I like DeAndre Swift a lot too, and it is a little early for me, but we'll talk about him here in a couple days because the guy has the full package in my opinion, and just being that alpha dog guy for Georgia this year, I think they're going to rely heavily on him, and I think we're going to see definitely a big production year from Swift, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a first-round pick. The running back conversation comes up every single year. There might be stats to prove or disprove, whatever it may be. But I think Swift and ETN are two guys that will definitely headline that conversation going forward because they are two dynamic, game-changing running backs.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are the two guys at the top of the class. I think the next guy you add would be like a Zach Moss or something like that. But we'll get on to more running backs. We'll get into some other positions as we go along here. But CP, thank you, my man, for joining me on a Tuesday as we have scheduled. We want to get in on Thursday to finish this thing off. So be sure to drop your comments below of your top 30 players going into the year. We will have the rest of our list revealed on Thursday's show. It'll be a jam-packed show, so be sure to join us for that. Smash the follow buttons on Twitter @_Christian Page, @Ruff's NFL Draft. Be sure to find us on Spreaker.com. It's very simple. Search Cover 1 NFL Draft on Spreaker. You'll find us. Rate, subscribe, do the iTunes thing, all the good stuff, guys. But thank you so much, CP. For everybody else, thank you as well. Until next time, this is Cover 1, the NFL Draft Podcast.